Me growing up took me a while even to get turned on by naked women because I'd grown up with panties on, pictures, girls in panties. That's what girls look like. You didn't see naked women, you saw just girls in panties. I mean, I still like panties, but I don't have to have panties anyway, you know what I'm saying? Because you sort of get used to it, But so things change. I mean, it changed over the years. I mean, our grandfathers would look at the ankles.
Why are human beings interested in seeing people fucking? Well, why not? Why do people go to Broadway? Why do we want to look at other people saying crying or some catharsis, whether it's Shakespearean comedy or tragedy? We are curious about other people.
There was a social revolution, I guess, the 60s, But the 60s wasn't so much sex as social. People feeling, well, maybe we could sort of free ourselves up a little bit. So different from the 50s, So now the 60s. And along with that came, well, now that we're a little freer, let's all just we can all start fucking.
The idea of a woman liking sex was shocking to me because I am old enough to have grown up in the streets of Williamsburg where I actually heard my friends say, I'm looking for a virgin. Today, if you heard some guy say he's looking for a virgin, you'd commit him. The revolution in emancipated sexuality and accepting hedonism in the hatred of religion and the superstition of religion, it's wonderful. Sex in the 60s and 70s was political. You can think of Abby Hoffman, Jerry Rubin. You could think about those women who argued, make love, not war.
It probably started when women started burning their bras, And it just is when gay people started coming out and women started coming out and saying that they had sexual needs as well.
The pill, emancipating women, it's a magnificent time. And you have Masters and Johnson. The Kinsey Institute at Masters and Johnson was considered pornographic. I grew up in a world where there was a book called Ideal Marriage, which argued that oral sex, cunnilingus, was acceptable as foreplay, but not as a final act. And I'm emancipated because I read Frank Harris, and I read Henry Miller, and Sexus, and Plexus.
I remember seeing the first issue of Screw on the newsstand, 1968. I saw Screw and I said, wow, something is happening. I wasn't a part of it yet, but I was thrilled that there was a newspaper called Screw on the newsstand, out in the open, next to the New York Times, Daily News, Screw. I said, wow, and it was 68, so that was the year, it was a big year. So yeah, you saw something was happening, and it was, you could sort of feel it was unstoppable. When I started, basically, they were 8mm loops, shot in a dirty basement on 14th Street. It was fun because when you threaded an 8mm projector and you projected the film, just the sound of it is, I guess you have to be a certain age to appreciate it, but there was something sexy about the whole process, of doing it and threading it and getting it ready, And then you could project it anywhere. You could project it onto, I used to have fun just putting a naked girl in front of the wall and just projecting onto her body. There were peep shows also in Times Square for a quarter. And there were these booths you go into and you drop quarters. Watch the films there. There wasn't a lot of awareness, it was all just this underground thing that nobody talked about.
The underground market was burgeoning in New York, in Los Angeles, and in San Francisco. It was sort of a tripartite situation. New York had all the better talent. San Francisco had a lot of crazy people, and we had the pretty people. It's really one movie that generates us into the sociological chic or porno chic era, and that's Deep Throat. It all begins with that movie, because before that, people were sort of sneaking in fervently to look at X-rated films. But Deep Throat opens in 1972 on one coast, Green Door opens on the other coast, so you have this continental sort of span of now material that you feel you need to see to keep up with the times. People now weren't uncomfortable watching adult movies anymore, so that was the first major attraction, and Linda Lovelace rises from that to become the first female superstar.
It was beginning to bust open, and that's what made it exciting. It was like revolutionary in the beginning. It was exciting. All that intensity in the beginning, the outlaw aspect of it. Deep Throat had a much bigger publicity because Hollywood was scared of that trial. They got involved in that because people like Warren Beatty or Jack Nicholson will think, well, what if I'm naked in a movie? And, you know, what if I want to fuck somebody in a movie? You know, it actually sort of became legal much later. Before that, there were a lot of wars, mini wars, and you could be prosecuted in different places, like the Deep Throat case. And I was prosecuted in a case in Long Island, a much less known case, but where they, you know, in 73, they went over. I was living in California. They arrested me in California to come to New York because I acted in a sex film. Everybody else took a plea deal. But myself and this girl, Tina Russell, who I mentioned, was in the movie. And we said, hey, fuck it, you know what? I said to my lawyer, well, what can happen to us? Technically, it was 7 years in jail and this kinds of fine. I said, but realistically, I'm an actor in this movie. I made $100. What will they do to me? He said, well, you'll probably get a little, you know, maybe a little fine or something. So I said, well, forget it, no deals. We'll go. So it was fun. I went to it. There's a jury, and they have to deal with this, you know. So I felt like I was part of the revolution. It was a revolution. It was something happening. They said, well, okay, this is basically legal now to shoot fuck films. Before that, there would be helicopters overhead. They're coming to get us. You know, the cops are watching us. You know, it's crazy.
The movies were very large budgets for the most part. The budgets were, you know, $250,000 to $500,000. They would shoot for 2 to 4 weeks at a time. You would come on set, you'd have a costume fitting and a rehearsal. It was very professional. And also there were no boundaries, you know, regarding, you know, sexual identity. Gay men worked with straight women, and straight women worked with gay men and straight men, and, you know, that's just the way it was. We had fluffers, and there were both male and female fluffers, so, you know, the movie always got made. You had terrific directors, Chuck Vincent, Gerard Damiano, Henri Pichard. It was really the best time in my life, being in New York City and just being at the hub of those 30 or 45 wonderful people that worked together for those 3 to 5 years in pornography at that time. When I entered the adult entertainment industry in 1975, it was primarily run by the mafia, and I was 17 years old. I was emancipated because I had been previously married. I decided not to name my, you know, to get a porn name like Kitty Litter or Chandelier or something. I decided to go with a real name, and I didn't want to bring my family's name into it, but I was enamored with Martha Mitchell during Watergate, so I named myself Sharon Mitchell. I went to the Social Security Department and I changed my name legally, and I've been Sharon Mitchell ever since. We were all out-of-work actors, you know, and we all worked on Broadway, we all worked off Broadway, we all did commercials, we were all in a soap opera of one type or another. I do remember that. And this was just another job. The thrill of it for me was being an exhibitionist and, you know, just getting back at my parents and the Catholic Church at the same time, I think. It always takes a certain type of person to, you know, perform in adult entertainment. You have to be extremely comfortable with your body. You have to be a little bit of a freak. For me, as a star, the persona of Sharon Mitchell was, you know, it was something that actually protected me for many years, I think. And whenever I would work, I would always work in character. I could never work as Sharon Mitchell, but I could work, you know, as the dominant lesbian auntie or the jilted wife. You never know why people get into the adult entertainment industry. You know, sometimes I think it's for the sex, sometimes I think it's for the money, sometimes I think it's for the attention and the stardom and the identity and the persona that adult entertainment gives you, or at least at that time. That was the time when we were stars. We were movie stars.
I was also a stockbroker. I mean, I've worn so many different hats. I was a publisher of a magazine, and yet nobody ever asked me for my advice about Wall Street, you know. They, you know, will mostly say, well, what was it like, you know, being a porn star and everything? And I have to say that at the time that we were in this business, the so-called golden age again, we really were treated, in my opinion, similarly to the B-movie stars of that era, the Diana Dors, the Jane Mansfields, you know, the Vavoom girls. I mean, when we had a big dinner dance or a convention or something, the women in the industry would go all out in terms of the hair and the clothing and, and their gowns and everything. It was like the frickin' Oscars, as far as we were concerned.
When someone offered me a role in a porn movie, I had just gone looking for nude modeling for extra money. I was living an alternative lifestyle in San Francisco, avant-garde theater, singing in jazz clubs. I needed extra money. Nude modeling, I had grown up in art schools. It was not it. Even though I was actually very shy about being naked, I didn't think there was anything wrong with it. And I was very insulted when they offered me work. And I stormed out of there and didn't do anything until my boyfriend at the time decided he would try it. Got a role in a big budget movie called Cry for Cindy that Anthony Spinelli directed. And I saw that, gee, this is really very legitimate. The people are beautiful. It's not so bad. The money's great. So I didn't know much about porn myself. And that was already 1975. So I knew very little.
I was Stasha Block, married to this dentist. We were both drug addicts, crazy people, the high life. And he used to be very violent with me. So I was looking for an escape not only from drugs, but from him. And my neighbors happened to hear him beating me up and said, you got to get out of this and you can do a still shoot and get some money and get away from this guy. So the first thing I did in porno was a still shoot. And I fell asleep. I was on Quaaludes. And they kind of propped me up against a tree and sort of, I think it was Little Bo Peep. Before you knew it, you heard snoring, and they had to wake me up and say, this isn't very sensual. We're not going to pay you for this. Wake up and smell the money. I had never heard of Chuck Vincent before in my life. Somebody sent me over there. They said, this is a producer. I'd never been in movies. I had no idea what to expect. He had a loft somewhere in the 30s in the Garment District. And at the time, it was a very downhill, not very attractive neighborhood. So, in fact, it was seedy. And I thought, I don't know if I want to go there. But what choice did I have? I had to get this money to get away from this husband of mine. So I went there. He was so pleasant, so warm. He made me feel beautiful. He said, I'm just going to make you a star. You have everything I want. And I said, well, what do I have to do? He said, just be yourself. The hitch here is that you have to take your clothes off, you have to have sex. Are you going to be able to do that? And I had done a little prostitution, so I thought, hey, well, that wasn't that attractive. If I'm going to be a star, if I have to take off my clothes, if I have to have sex, going to make money, get away from this guy, that was the plan. Chuck Vincent was remarkable right from the start. Friendly, warm. He said, we're going to get you away from that husband. Don't you worry about it. So they sort of took me under their wing. I don't know how I did. I was so brain dead. I was on so many drugs. But I just got all my places, all my cues, memorized the lines, and it was sort of like wind me up, and I did it. The sex was was my ticket to a little bit of fame, money, and having sex. So it looked like a good enterprise for me. It actually helped me subside in some of my drug use. So I think a lot of people were looking for a haven and a way of expression where they could feel free, still get the money they needed for their drugs, like it was in my case. And this was a beautiful place to feel like you were a star somehow. I think everyone's looking for something to fill a gaping hole inside of them. And everyone's looking for love or to feel beautiful, to be appreciated. If, for example, someone hasn't had a great sex life and they come into porno, all of a sudden you have this great sex life. Everyone admires you. Everyone says you're sexy and beautiful or handsome in the case of men. You're making a lot of money. My agenda was like, just get high, get the money, and if sex is available and people are going to treat you really well and have beautiful sex, that was okay at the time for me.
Before the star system, they would just tack names on, whatever name. They didn't even ask you what name you wanted. So sometimes you'd be Gregory Pecker or Ben Dover or Harry Reams was originally a joke name. Harry Reams. But what happened is that people started to become known for their joke names. So I thought, well, I don't want to go through the rest of my life as like Gregory Pecker. I kept my first name because I didn't want to have to answer to anything but other than Jamie, even though it's a little funny name. And I took the name of the girl I was living with at the time. Her name was Gillis, because I thought, well, it was like a married name. I was living with her. So I thought, well, if I ever known as Jamie Gillis, that's a name I can relate to. That's my, it's sort of my name, a name that means something to me.
With the exception of a very few, who cared what the men looked like? We're hired for one reason: get up, get in, get out, get off on cue. It was the women that motivated this industry. It was the women that created this business. They were the backbone. They were the spine of this industry, and they most of the time spent their careers on their spines, writhing around and taking as many pop shots in the face as possible at the pleasure of the audience. That I've been in audiences that would count them. One orgasm after another, after another, after another, after another, after another. That was the money shot. That was the essence of a true male adult performer. Get up, get in, get out, get off, on cue.
I think it's more natural to have a problem doing that for a guy, probably, than not. You've got a whole crew, and in that size production, you've probably got 20 people standing around counting on you, waiting on you. And in those, in my movies, I don't have cum shots, but in those movies, you had to have the cum shot. And they're all standing there waiting. Talk about pressure.
You rarely got to have sex in a bed. So it was never an easy job, so there were very few men that were prepared and able to do this. The number one quality for a male star during that era, and I still think today, it's very important to make the person that you're working with feel beautiful and sexy and wanted. Because the ability to do that is very difficult, because men typically don't get to choose the partners that they're with. Women, we always got to choose, no, not this guy, oh, maybe him, not him. But for men, they really had to throw themselves into unknown situations. If there's a connection between two actors, then I think you're going to get the endurance that you need, you're going to get the footage that you need, you're going to get the pop shot, you're going to get all the hardcore footage and things that you need. But you really have to get into a groove with someone. And if you're not in a groove with someone, you can always tell the guy is like completely in his head and out there.
The guys that I knew, and for that matter, the women that I thought were the most fun, were the people who were just like sex crazed. That made it more. In other words, people who really were driven sexually rather than in terms of, well, they want to be great actors or stars or make a lot of money. People like John Leslie or Joey Silvera. We would just really be into the sexuality of it all.
There's only one man who really identifies with the first generation, that's the king, John C. Holmes. He brought it out of the dark ages, he brought it out of the minor leagues into the major leagues, became the Babe Ruth of X, and truly a man who proved that all men are not created equal.
Johnny Holmes at the time was famous because he had a 14.5-inch cock. I was seeing a shrink for 30 years, and I remember my fantasy was that all my problems, all my insecurities with women would dissipate if I had a 14.5-inch cock. But you see, that's like looking for gold at the end of the rainbow. It was a deception, because Johnny Holmes, who I got to meet, who I got to be friends with, who I interviewed, Johnny Holmes, with his 14.5-inch huge cock, was in every high-risk group. He was a drug user. He actually stole cocaine. Next time you spoke to Gloria, he went to Gloria Leonard's house and stole her coke. He was a drug user. He was bisexual. If there was a lie, then Johnny Holmes practiced it, which meant here's a man who had everything I wanted, and he was still a shell. It's like T.S. Eliot. He was one of the hollow people.
In my opinion, it didn't really become mainstream until the onset of the VCR. And then everybody had a porn film and could take it home. The industry grew. It grew by leaps and bounds. It became something different than what we once had, which was very special. The industry moved to California. Video became of age, and all of a sudden the budgets got very small, which meant the shoots got smaller, and the art form completely changed. When I got in, there was an overlap, because there was no homophobia, there was no HIV, there was not a big difference of sexuality. Everyone was sexual, everyone was having sex with everyone else, regardless if they were the same sex or not. So for me, being a bisexual, I was in a perfect, business, a perfect orientation, and I just felt comfortable and assumed that most people were bisexual. There was a big change with HIV. When HIV came along, a lot of my friends, Annie Sprinkle, Candida Royale, Kelly Nichols, Veronica Hart, were stunned because a lot of our friends got very ill, you know, and I was thought to have HIV at one point, or what they used to call gay-related disease. I mean, this was way back when. And it really changed. And the gay industry stepped up to the plate and did something about it, unlike the straight industry, who stayed in complete denial and still is. And it also was very difficult, you know, to be one of like the 10 people that were getting regularly tested for HIV and were asking, you know, okay, if I'm going to work with this person, could I see their HIV test? That just wasn't done a lot in the straight industry. And then John Holmes got HIV and said, hey, look, everybody needs to go get tested. And, you know, half of them still didn't test. And nothing was really done about that until 1998 when I founded AIM Healthcare and, you know, started the requirement for testing. But still, the denial is there. It's a necessary inconvenience that I provide to most.
And it was good while it was good, but then all of a sudden when I came to that realization for myself that I thought this was what was going on and that I was somehow projecting into the world via my behavior, that it was okay. It was sanctioned for people to just sort of cross all kinds of lines sexually, and I didn't want to be part of that anymore. I didn't want to give permission by my behavior that that was okay. So we did Jack and Jill 2, and it was very funny. Chuck called me up, he goes, do you want to work with Jack? I said, yes, but I'm leaving the industry, like, tomorrow. He said, but my real name is Stash. He goes, Stash, you can't do that. I said, I know, I'm going to miss you so much, and you got me my SAG card, and I love you forever, but I'm going. I'm so happy that I did it. I'm so happy that I found the love that I found there. If I had just become a street person and didn't have that opportunity, I mean, it was a total education for me. And I got a lot of love, and it held me in abeyance from actually dying. So it means a great deal to me.
I don't go along with this idea of, oh, I'm just going to tell the world that I was a victim and I really didn't know what I was doing and maybe they'll accept me now. No, you know what? I take full responsibility. I chose to do it and I didn't do anything wrong. There is nothing wrong with enjoying an adult movie. As long as everyone is consensual, the people in it and the people viewing, there's nothing wrong. I realized that a lot of doors would be closed to me. I didn't try to run from it ever. I think that I didn't realize how much it would follow me because we were doing film. At the time we thought, oh, film will get put in a vault eventually, collect dust, no one will remember. All of a sudden, cable TV and video were born. And Candida Royale was all of a sudden out there again in this new medium. It was going to follow me, and it was kind of a weird thing. And I know a lot of people had issues with it. Like, oh no, people are going to start seeing me. What am I going to do? How am I going to hide from this? I have friends from that period who have really tried to hide from it, and they bury themselves. It's a terrible thing. Fortunately, I've always been in the arts. I've always been in theater, and I found a way to take my name and do something different that I could be proud of. I created the Femline. I created a voice for women in adult movies. I pioneered a new genre. And this was a way to embrace who I was, take that name back, and do something I could be proud of.
The basic, rule is don't do anything that you're going to be ashamed of 25 years from now. Because if you're having a bad day, we don't get residuals. You have to charge a lot and do a lot and be really happy because, people still come up to me and remember me from movies 25, 30 years ago. And, I have to be proud of that. And I am. Of course there are people that know who we are and are always going to follow us. I've considered it an asset because I'm the woman I am today because of everything Sharon Mitchell did and experienced. And that includes the porn, the drugs, everything, you name it. I have absolutely not one regret of my life. We're called classics now, kind of like an old car, which is pretty neat.
The women of today who make porno films are boring puppets. All they are, they're pretty and their tits are man-made. The women of today are all about, I'll make 6 to 12 fuck films, and then maybe I'll be featured at a topless club. There was no topless club in the 70s. Whether it was Samantha Fox or Gloria Leonard, you had women who made fuck films because they wanted to. It was a statement of that they were free and they could. The quality was there. There'd be 3 films a week. Now there are 3 films a second. So it was, truthfully, sex was very clearly a political statement, which it's not today. Today it's just a fart.
What I see now is just a very fast, exploitive, disposable amount of people that are in and out of this industry. I had a 22-year career in front of the camera. These are long-time careers. The average span of a porn career now is 3 months to 3 years maximum. So these people are brought in, spit up, and chewed out in this very fast, pace. I see casualties from the porn business today. I see people get, recruited immediately on their 18th birthday that really don't need anything more than money, that aren't sure about what they're about to do, and we're in the position of having to give them a tremendous amount of prevention education, both psychosocially and for their health, in a very short period of time. I don't think people really have the thought process to understand what it is they're about to do that's going to go out to millions and millions of people all over the world.
People are really kind of losing their minds. Sex has gone to a place now, it's spun off. It's not even innocent. It might have had a little bit of innocence to it, but it is completely out of whack. And what people are really doing is they're missing a very strong center of their soul.
It's almost like Fear Factor or Can You Top This? I mean, it's the sex stuff that they're doing now is so risky and so bizarre. And so, some of it's borderline unhealthy. It's not terribly sexy to me. I mean, I look at it and it's like a train wreck or a horror movie that you can't really take your eye off of it because it's so shocking. And I'm not sure if that has anything to do with sensuality or sexuality or anything that we did in the 70s and 80s.
Now I almost feel sorry for these kids. They're fucking every day and they're fucking everything, and they're making money, but they don't have the revolution. It's not, that's missing. It's just, when a kid said to me, I was on a set a few years ago, just like a little cameo walkthrough thing, and the kid was screwing this girl on camera, and the camera was taking a break from it, and he said, "Oh, Jamie," he says, he sees me, he says, "Jamie Gillis," he said, "if it weren't for you, I wouldn't be here today." He's just some schlub banging his bitch in the point, and he was thinking, "Wow, I'm here today."
The bottom line for me is all sex is good sex. The worst thing is no sex.